Today, we're illuminating how you can be authentic and attached. Welcome to the Fierce Authenticity Podcast, where we're illuminating and dismantling all of the ways supremacy culture has impacted our relationships with ourselves, with Source, and with others. Not just the overt ways, like racism, sexism, ageism, alcoholism, and all the other isms, but also the sneaky, cunning ways you wouldn't have thought of, like perfectionism, imposter syndrome, judgment, burnout, the not enoughs, and the hustle to achieve. I'm your hostess, Shirani M. Batuk, and I'm a relationship therapist, leadership development consultant, and author of the book series, Fierce Authenticity. Whether you're a returning listener or you're new here, I want to extend a very warm welcome to you and invite you to connect with me through the Fierce Authenticity newsletter community. If you're ready to rise above an inherited systematic invasion rooted in fear and lack so that you can calm and refocus those energies towards reclaiming a fiercely authentic personal relationship grounded in an abundance and love that is so radiant all your other relationships are elevated with you, then this is the space for you. I invite you to visit www.fierceauthenticity.com/connect to join me. I'm so excited that you're here. And now let's dive in. Welcome back to the podcast. I hope you enjoyed a week off so that you could integrate and rest and digest all of the powerful information that we have been sharing on the podcast so far, and especially for season 3. Season 3 has taken a very deep dive and intense turn where we're really looking at illuminating and dismantling the ways that supremacy culture shows up in our everyday, day-to-day interpersonal lives, beyond the larger systemic issues, really looking at how it shows up inside of each and every one of us. And it's heavy, it's deep. And so we need to create and carve out time and space to rest and integrate. And that's what last week was, an opportunity to just breathe in, let it settle, get caught up on anything that you needed to get caught up on. And then today, we're actually going to pick back up with the conversation we ended on our last episode. In the previous episode, I shared with you about the work of Dr. Gabor Mate and how he speaks about the fact that as humans, we have 2 survival needs. The first one is attachment with others, in particular, as babies are primary caregivers, and authenticity, which he describes as our connection or attachment, in my words, to ourselves and to our own gut feelings, our own inner knowing, our intuition, and just that connection to our insides. And I shared an example about how for a lot of us growing up under systems of oppression and cultures of supremacy, when we see that it looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, and it quacks like a duck, but we're told it's not a duck, that can really lead us to question ourselves. So we start to question what our experience is. And it's in this questioning of our experiences that we start to choose to disconnect from ourselves. And because we learn that if we can't trust ourselves, then the best thing to do is disconnect from ourselves so that we can stay in connection and in attachment with those around us. And I shared about how this goes to our basic wiring, how our brain is wired this way. We are social creatures. Humans are social creatures. Literally, our brain is wired for social and emotional connection and interaction. And we will choose when given the choice between being attached with others or being authentic, we will choose our attachment with others at the expense of ourselves. And that is because we're wired that way. We're wired for connection, we're wired for belonging, and we're wired to be in community, whether that community is promoting safe and supportive cultures, or whether that community is supporting systems of oppression and supremacy culture and everything that comes with that, including violence, hatred, chaos, anger, and all of that other stuff that we see primarily and predominantly in our world today. So today, I want to speak about how we actually don't have to choose between attachment or authenticity, that we can actually experience both. We can be both attached to others and authentic, meaning attached to ourselves, our own inner world, inner knowing, intuition, gut feelings, and experiences. We can have both. And it feels really important to speak here about the binary. We live in a world that has been colored by the binary, a social construct of one or the other. And a lot of times we hear that in terms of gender, male, female, boy, girl. The binary is also yes, no, all or nothing. And a lot of times when we have the experience of having to choose between one or another option, that's because that conditioning is coming from the supremacy culture conditioning of the binary, where it's one or the other. Whereas Indigenous wisdom and other wisdom traditions knew that it wasn't about the binary. It's not one or the other, that there are so many possibilities in between. I remember speaking with a mentor of mine once, actually, and we were talking about black and white thinking. And I was like, oh, yeah, I need to learn that there's a whole spectrum between black and white thinking. And it was funny because for the longest time, I used to think that what was between black and white was gray. And in reality, as I have been engaged with my own business for over the last 7 years, and I've done some design stuff, playing in Canva, and when you look at the color chart inside of the Canva design software, the truth is, in between the colors or tints and shades of black and white, there is a whole rainbow spectrum of other colors. And that's where we receive and experience the beauty and the gifts and the wisdom of life. And so it feels really important to say that when we're focusing on the binary, the one or the other, the black or the white, the yes or the no, the this or the that, the good, the bad, right? When we're only focused on two options and we have to choose one of the two options, meaning that one option is correct and the other option is incorrect, what we're doing is we're missing the entire rainbow spectrum of colors that comes in between. And this is what Indigenous wisdom and other wisdom traditions understood, that there isn't just one choice. And more importantly, that we can choose the both and. Now, the both and is something that is not very familiar to those of us who have been conditioned by supremacy and other systems of oppression. And the both and looks like I get to be authentic and connected with myself and attached with myself, and I get to be in relationship and attached with others. That is what the both and looks like. That is where the entire rainbow spectrum of colors comes in. And that is where the beauty lies. Because when you think about it as I have to choose between being authentic and being myself and being who I am and being connected and attached with myself and my own gut feelings and my own inner knowings and intuition, or being attached to others so that I can be social and have some sort of belonging somewhere and an attachment to a group, something beyond me, well, just feel into the energy of that. Even speaking it out loud, I feel how just rigid and hard and brittle that feels. And actually, brittle isn't the right word. It just feels very rigid. And when I think about it or speak about it as choosing that I can be authentic and I can be attached and in relationship with others, it just feels soft. I feel a softening in my body, and I feel into the whole spectrum of possibilities. That entire rainbow of colors is presented to me as possibilities. And that's what I want you to know and understand. I want you to know and understand that you don't have to choose one or the other and remain in that very hard, rigid binary, that you can choose to float along and choose to have both authenticity and attachment. And so, what does that look like? What does it look like for us to be able to choose to be in relationship with ourselves and express ourselves authentically in the world as a result of having a connection with ourselves and being attached and in relationship with others? What does that look like? Especially when so many of us have grown up and lived with experiences of when we show up as our authentic selves, the people in our lives with whom we're attached, they may not like what they see. They might be scared, or they might be concerned. They might think that we're weird. They might judge us. And if you've learned anything here with me, it is that fear, judgment, criticism, those are all of the ways that supremacy culture's impact shows up. That's how we have internalized the conditioning. And so when those experiences show up, when we start to experience judgment, criticism, denial, defensiveness, when we start to experience fear or disconnection, what we're really experiencing is an awareness that, oh, supremacy's conditioning is operating here. Systems of oppression are at play here. And I can choose to still be who I am while loving the other person and seeing them as a human who is suffering under supremacy's oppressive systems right now. It doesn't mean that I have to accept their abuse. It doesn't mean that I have to accept any unacceptable behavior. It doesn't mean I become a doormat and allow myself to get walked all over. It doesn't mean any of that. What it does mean is that you don't get sucked in or pulled in to the illusion with them. And I'm using the word illusion not because systems of oppression are an illusion or supremacy culture is an illusion, but the illusion is that we must operate from those systems and that we must remain in bondage to those systems and that we must remain in acquiescence of those systems. Those are the illusions. And when I can see that someone else is under the spell of supremacy culture's oppressive tactics and oppressive practices, and I can see that, and I can operate from that rainbow spectrum because I can see the both and, then I can show up with love and compassion for them while also showing up with love and compassion for myself. And when I can do that and hold both of these seemingly opposite experiences, that's when not only do I get to experience miracles, but the person with whom I'm in relationship with also gets to experience the miracles. You know, that makes me think of a quote from A Course in Miracles, that miracles are merely expressions of love. And we've been taught under systems of supremacy and systems of oppression that we have to choose between loving ourselves or loving another. Again, that binary thinking of one or the other. When in reality, you can show up with love for yourself and love for the person with whom you're in relationship with. And when you do this, you get to experience that softness, that gentleness, that ease. You get to experience the rainbow, that spectrum of colors that lies between black and white. And you get to experience miracles, which are simply expressions of love. So just pause there for a moment and let that sink in. And I want you to know that when you choose love for yourself and love for other, you're choosing to be authentic and attached. I think this episode is feeling complete for the moment, so we'll go ahead and wrap up here because that just feels like a very poignant place for us to just pause and let this settle and let this integrate. And I want to direct you to, if you want to hear more about this binary, this either or how to pull yourself out of the illusion and not to get caught up and attached in it, then what I'm thinking of actually is the episode that I had with my dear friend Lisa Miron in season 1 of the podcast. And I believe the title was Healing the Polarity. Yes, it's the episode Healing the Polarity. It'll be linked in the show notes for you. And it'll paint a picture, just going a little bit deeper into this binary, this either or, and how we pull ourselves out from that illusion so that we can stay in a place where we can be centered on love for ourselves and love for others without having to choose one or the other. And so with that, have a wonderful week. And I'm going to invite you to practice what it might feel like to feel into the both and as you move through your week this week. Take really good care, and we will be together again soon. I want to take a moment to honor and acknowledge the amazing support team that helps make this podcast possible for you. Starting with Diego Velazquez, our podcast editor and the talented artist who created our custom music. Ana Olvina, my wonderful assistant who creates all of our beautiful graphics and the transcript of every episode, which you can find over at www.fierceauthenticity.com. Biana Sandich, who writes our amazing show notes and does it so well that I bet you couldn't tell it wasn't me. The talented Jillian at Epoxy Studios, whose photography is our cover art and pretty much every other curated image that you see of me on social media. My husband, who puts up with me when it's 11:30 p.m. on a Sunday night and I'm like, hey babe, I gotta record a podcast episode. Like right now. Is that okay? My higher power, whose divine wisdom flows through me to bring these messages to you. And last but not least, I want to thank you, my listener, so much for listening in. If you'd like to join the podcast support team, some ways you can do so are by rating and reviewing the podcast, sharing it with everyone you know, and, if possible, making a financial contribution through the link in the show notes so that you too can be part of the team elevating this podcast and making it possible to bring to other listeners like you. I'm sending you so much love, and we will be together again soon.